Tecno is slowly making a name for itself in the smartphone world and is expanding to different markets across the globe. The Pova series is the budget selection of Tecnos limited to a few markets, with India being one of them. This year's Pova 5 series is more about gaming, and the Pova 5 Pro is more so. The handset runs a Dimensity 6080 chipset paired with 8 GB of RAM, a fairly potent setup for its class. The body styling hints at the Pova 5 Pro's gaming heritage with its LED illuminated maker design. It definitely stands out from the crowd in the sub-INR 15,000 segment. The device also boasts a rather big vapor chamber that Tecno says is enough to keep the Dimensity 6080 about 2 degrees Celsius cooler. Unlike some of its competitors, the Pova 5 Pro brings a 120Hz display to the table. You may wonder whether the Dimensity can maintain HRR gaming, and luckily, Tecno has worked closely with some of the developers to optimize the gaming experience, so the Pova 5 Pro should be able to hit 120 FPS in Mobile Legend, Bang Bang for example, and even maintain stable frames above 80 FPS. Free Fire, on the other hand, can run at 90 FPS, whereas PUBG Mobile makes use of the linear motor and provides contextual tactile feedback. The whole hardware runs on a 5000 mAh battery, supporting fast 68W charging, another rare find in this price bracket. Additionally, the software allows bypass charging to preserve battery health over time if you play games while charging. One of the cool things about the Pova 5 Pro is the camera setup. It's a no-nonsense setup consisting of a 50MP main shooter and a depth sensor. Given that any other auxiliary camera wouldn't add much value to the phone, it's good that Tecno kept it simple and went for a simple camera setup. Due to the industrial-inspired Nature design language, the Pova 5 Pro reminds us of the Infinix GT10 Pro. However, the Pova 5 Pro has a more impressive light show. The back of the device has RGB LED lighting in the shape of 3 lines crossing. The rest of the ornaments on the back fit the overall style as they pop like 3D objects under the glass. But only the camera island actually protrudes. The camera bulge isn't as prominent though, but the camera rings are maybe a bit excessive, given the tiny sensors they house. We like the design overall. It's fresh and targets a specific audience. We have the Dark Illusion and Silver Fantasy versions, but there's also the Free Fire edition available, which comes with special themes for the UI. Of course, the whole build is made of plastic, but surprisingly, it's a bit hefty, sitting at 212 grams. Interestingly, it doesn't feel hefty in hand, and it's reasonably thin at too, 8.1 mm. Speaking of inches, the front isn't anything out of the ordinary. Aside from the thick chin, the rest of the bezels are thin enough, while the punch hole is centered and a bit bigger due to the LCD panel. OLEDs allow for a more precise cutout. The side is flat with a glossy finish that attracts a lot of fingerprints. The left side is reserved for the SIM card tray, which holds a dedicated microSD card slot as well, while the right holds the volume rocker and the power button. The latter lies too flat for our taste, as it's easy to miss it when reaching for it. It's also a bit too high up the frame, so you need to stretch your thumb a bit. The top and bottom hold the loudspeaker grills, and the latter is also home to the USB-C connector and the 3.5 mm audio jack. One cool feature about the USB connector is that it has moisture detection, so the handset will warn you if it's wet and immediately unplug the charging cable to avoid damage. Overall, the design is nice, but may also be too much for some users. Keep in mind that it's a big device with a 6.67-inch screen, so the sharp edges and the flat frame aren't contributing to a comfortable grip. However, the flat edges are desirable when gaming, which is supposed to be the main purpose of the handset. Even though the Pova 5 Pro is a lower mid-range device, it offers an impressive display for its class. The device is built around a 6.78-inch IPS LCD panel with a 120 Hz refresh rate. Resolution is pretty standard, 1080x 2460px, and there are no HDR certifications, not that we expected any. They are not standard in this price range. Tecno advertises 580 nights of peak brightness, and we managed to measure up to 509 nights, which is pretty close to the advertised peak brightness. There's no brightness boost, so those nits would have to do. And in our experience, outdoor usage is somewhat uncomfortable on a bright sunny day. Color accuracy isn't the best out of the box. The average DE2000 is 8.4, which is a lot. Colors are a bit oversaturated, which is fine, but the whites and grays appear straight up blue. You can adjust the display's color temperature to a warmer hue, but entire presets are unavailable. The device runs on a 5000 mAh battery, and one would expect that when coupled with the energy-efficient Dimensity 6080 SoC, battery life will be nothing short of great. However, the overall score is somewhat disappointing. The screen-on runtimes are also not great. Web browsing is fine, but the video playback is quite shorter than on a device with an old screen. There are barely any phones in this price bracket scoring under 100 hours of endurance rating. Charging is where the Pova 5 Pro shines. The device is unmatched in its class when it comes to charging speed. The 5000 mAh battery can take up to 68 W with the provided proprietary charger and cable. The smartphone blows everyone out of the water and posts impressive charging times. In just 30 minutes, you get 70% of the charge back. Only a few competitors get close to that. A full charge takes only 50 minutes. The Pova 5 Pro runs a pair of stereo speakers, but it's a hybrid setup, meaning the left channel, usually the top speaker, doubles as an earpiece as well. A small grille on the top side of the frame lets the sound come out freely. The Pova 5 Pro offers a no-nonsense camera setup, for the most part that is. The primary 50MP f1. 6 camera is aided by a 0.8MP depth sensor, and that's pretty much it. We are surprised to see such big aperture though. Unfortunately, we weren't able to identify the sensor, so we will just go with megapixel count here as the main spec. Even though most competitors offer some sort of usable auxiliary camera, such as 8MP ultrawide or 2MP macro shooters, they don't appear to contribute to the overall camera experience that much. So we can't be mad at Tecno for not including them. The 50MP main camera here seems more than adequate on paper. The Tecno Pova 5 Pro runs on the latest available Android 13 and the most recent version of Tecno's proprietary HiOS 13 Android overlay. If you're familiar with the older HiOS versions, this one won't look too different, and you will feel right at home. In fact, there are little to no changes compared to the older HiOS 12. Getting into the Pova 5 Pro is business as usual, with both fingerprint and face recognition available. You can choose to either unlock upon touch of the power button or a full-on press. The latter option is advisable if you don't want to have frequent misreadings with your phone in your pocket, for example, because the software will always be looking for a fingertip. Once you're past that, you arrive at a standard home screen interface. The leftmost pane, called the Zero screen, holds cards with suggested news, weather and quotes widgets, and an app usage widget. You can disable the Zero screen in the desktop settings. Although the competition in this price segment in India is pretty packed, the Tecno Pova 5 Pro stands out not only with design, but with decent performance, fast charging, good camera experience, and highly customizable and feature-rich HiOS. It's not the most popular Android overlay out there, but we are surprised by its responsiveness and functionality. The first two competitors that come to mind are the popular Xiaomi Redmi Note 12 4G and 5G. The former is slightly more affordable than the Pova 5 Pro, while the latter starts at INR 17,000, about INR 2,000 above the target price. Both devices offer superior display quality as they rock old panels at 120Hz instead of LCDs and have longer battery endurance. The Pova 5 Pro surprises with an arguably better camera, faster charging, and a marginally faster chipset. Depends on the scenario though. Alternatively, Samsung has a couple of phones in the same price bracket, the Galaxy A14 5G and the Galaxy M14. Both are very similar phones with little to no difference. The A145G usually comes with Dimensity 700 for most markets, but can also be found with an Exynos 1330, just like the M14. The latter also has faster wired charging. All in all, the Tecno Pova 5 Pro is a solid mid-ranger, with the only glaring drawback being battery life. Pretty much all competitors out there have better endurance, but no one can beat the Pova 5 Pro when it comes to charging. We hope that will be enough to persuade you, because the Pova 5 Pro is an easy recommendation. There are only a couple of rivals running better displays too.